The representative for the Office of the European Union for the Pacific, Mr. Jesus Lavina, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Specialist for the Decent Work Strategy and Officer in charge of the ILO, Mr. Satoshi Sasaki, Mr. Agni Deo Singh, National Treasurer for the Fiji Trade Union Congress and representative of workers, Mr. Noel Tefinga, representative of the employers. Things are going to fall off. Teachers and students, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to everybody. Nice to see everybody on a Friday. Everybody always looks happy on Friday. But today is a good day too. So not only that we're happy about it's Friday, we're also happy because we're here to talk about something that we shouldn't really be happy about, something we should eradicate, World Child Labor Day. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted the attention to the phenomenon of children working has probably never been greater than it is today. Children are employed during school hours, either in domestic work or any other duty will deprive them of education and in turn infringe on their basic rights, such as the right to education and their right to be a child. I think for me that is one of the most important things, the right for children to be children. Many people agree that some type of work done by children do not harm their lives and are considered as part of the moral, social and physical development of the child. These can be related to a father teaching his son how to plant kumala or dalo or tapioca and harvest dalo, or to a mother teaching her daughter to clean the house and to do the family work. However, there are certain situations when children should never be allowed to be employed in the workplace. These types of employment are termed as employment which will endanger and hinder the physical, social and moral development of children. Some examples of these developments are prostitution, employment in the handling of dangerous chemicals, and employment which forces children to do things without their consent. That is not allowed. The consequences of child labor on the opportunities of those affected are difficult to measure. No price can be placed on the cost of lost childhood or the psychological and the emotional damage suffered by the children trapped in child labor, particularly hazardous child labor. Our gathering today signifies our serious concern and commitment in ensuring that we join the global community in eradicating and freeing our children from the vicious cycle of child labor. And that's what it is. It's a vicious cycle. This year's theme is No to Child Labor, Yes to Quality Education. The children for Fiji, the ones sitting here and those who are not here, you are our future. And you have the right to enjoy your childhood. The children also have the right to look forward to a bright future. Many times we focus our attention to where children are employed in the commercial sectors, and we overlook the fact that there are many children employed in their very own homes and are deprived from basic fundamental rights. That's something that we overlook, that we do not see. Child labor is not only found in business, but also in our very own homes. Therefore, child labor needs to be looked at holistically as a whole and on a national basis. There are instances in our own homes and communities where children have had to stay at home and miss school because they have to look after family commitments, whether they're looking after a younger sibling or somebody who is sick. These happen during school hours, during the time when they're supposed to be at school. Sometimes children are asked to go and harvest the mole, go and pick the oranges. or the lemon so that they can go and sell in the market. And when they do this, they don't go to school. So they do not get the development that they need. Selling produce at the market while their parents are on other commitments such as selling produce at the market, attending to traditional and religious commitments, just to name a few. All of these examples are perfect examples of child labor which are happening and prevalent in Fiji as we speak. These domestic activities deprive a child from attaining a good education. And you know, under the Convention of the Rights of the Children, this is one of the important things. A child has the right to education. A child has a right to a lot of things, and one of the important ones, and that is something that our government has signed to that particular convention. The findings of child labor school-based survey conducted in November 2012 in collaboration with the Ministry of Education involved 79 schools, including both primary and secondary schools from all the 4 divisions, confirmed the existence of child labor in Fiji. It exists in our country. Sometimes we think that these things just happen in other countries, like in Africa or some of the poor Asian countries, but it actually exists here. Actually exists in our country. That is why it is something that we have to take cognizance of, and as a country, as a nation, as a society, we have to join hands to do something about it. That's why today is very important. It's a day that we think about these things and we advocate about it. We put it out in the media and we talk about it so that people can do something about it. When children are involved in domestic work, when they are supposed to be in school, they have very little chances of doing well in school. Studies by the ILO in developing nations such as Cambodia and Senegal confirm this fact. And over the past few weeks, this week, we parliamentarians have been at a workshop where my good friend Satoshi was, where we've been looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. Now the world has come together and decided, what does development mean for the next 15 years? And when they look at this, they look at things like poverty, and they find that children, a lot of those who end up in poverty are those who have no education or just primary education. Most of those are in poverty. So there is a very strong linkage between education and poverty. So if we want to reduce poverty in Fiji, in the world, one of the things that has been proven through statistics is that if people have good education, there's more likelihood that they will not be in poverty. You can still have poverty if you have a university degree, but the chances of you being able to walk out of poverty is much stronger when you have good education. That has been proven by statistics. More recently, the ILO report on child labor 2015, Paving the Way to Decent Work for Young People, revealed empirical evidence of how child labor combined with limited education can lead to increased youth vulnerability and greater difficulties in transiting to good jobs. The report concluded that eliminating child labor is a key policy goal in itself and a necessary starting point for achieving decent work for all. A partnership towards tackling child labor is the best way forward. That's an important statement. It's not something that can be done just by one agency. It can't be done by government, but it needs to be done by partnership by everybody in society. That's the only way that we'll be able to address this. Through working together, we can first thing that we need to do, all of us, to report instances of child labor in domestic work and then provide the much needed assistance. You know, many times, all of us, we talk about all of these things, child labor, but when you meet somebody selling sasa, when you know that child should be doing something, should be in school, nobody does anything about it. We turn the blind eye to it. We just walk straight past. That's that is what we need. The first thing is that when we know it exists, you've got to do something about it. You have to. Just like the same thing for us in my Ministry of Health. When you find a situation where people are buying cigarette rolls, which is not allowed, people see this and they just walk past it. If we continue to do that, we become a very complacent society. We need a society where people are energized and they know that something is wrong. They do something about it. When all of us in society see that something is wrong and we do something about it, that's the only way that we can change society. And that's what we need in this instance. For child labor, if you see it, you must do something about it. If you can't take action yourself, you need to pass the information on to somebody who can do something about it. That's absolutely critical. Working together in getting the right policies, institutions and operational systems with proper governance, and review mechanisms in place to sustain our pursuit is very critical. This initiative requires a coordinated and integrated approach, pooling together of national, regional, and international resources and networking opportunities. Government's commitment. Let's talk briefly about what government has committed to. Our big commitments about government is reflected in the supreme law of this country. Constitution is the mother of all laws. Every law that we have in this country, it must feed from that Constitution. So if whatever the Constitution says, we must do in this country, we must deliver. So the Constitution has some commitments about education. This is what it has a right to free education. Constitution says children have the right to free education. Why? Because if we give education, we know that children have a chance of a better future. That's why it makes that commitment. Through this commitment, government has introduced child-friendly policies like free education, where you don't have to pay the fees for your child. Not only in secondary school, but also in primary school, in secondary school. Eventually, when they get to university, you have things like TELS and the scholarships to make sure that people have access to education. But more, this is on the belief that education is a way forward for getting out of poverty. Free education, the school bus fare subsidies. Not only your fees are paid for, but to take you from home to school, that also you don't have to pay. Free textbooks, and lately free milk and wheat bix, because sometimes children get to school because if they have not had anything to eat, and you know, what part of your body uses the most energy? Which part of your body do you think uses the most? This? Which one? The brain. So in the brain, you need glucose, you need sugar to get to your brain. We need to make sure that people get to school, they have something in their stomach so the brain can function. No use getting to school and your brain half dead. That's why government has also introduced this free milk and wheat bix for all the children in class 1. So at least that they have something to get the brain working. Giving fuel for the brain. Further assistance is provided by the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation on the care and protection allowances to children who need this assistance. The issue of quality education definitely needs our common attention. While the issue of education curriculum, what you're actually taught in school, is vital in this context, the other equally important area is on the delivery of the curriculum, how it is actually taught, which leads to the issue of teacher competency, how good our teachers are, and capacity and capability together with the commitment and the attitude to deliver. And I'm sure that this is an area that is included in the current education reform by the Ministry of Education, and I wish to convey on behalf of this particular ministry, which is responsible for child labor, a very big vinagwa level to the Ministry of Education on all of their pro-free education policies. Now we have some statistics. As I mentioned earlier, we always think that these big things like child labor doesn't exist in Fiji, but it actually exists. And here's some of the statistics to show this. In Fiji, as per the child labor databases set up by our ministry with the assistance of the EU and the ILO Tackle project, we have recorded from 2011 to 2014 a total of 173 cases of child labor. That could be the actual number, there could be more out there. These are the ones that have been recorded. For 2011, we had 64 cases. 64 cases for 2012, 41 cases for 2013, and only 4 cases in 2014. 41 cases for 2013 and 4 cases in 2014. All 173 cases have been resolved by the Child Labor Unit of the Ministry. The Ministry has also withdrawn children from child labor. That means they go, they find children working, ministry actually takes them out of that situation so that they go, take them back to school, they are referred back to school with the assistance from the Ministry of Social Welfare and the Ministry of Education. Government's further commitment is fully articulated in the provision of the legislation that governs the ministry, the Employment Relations Promulgation of 2007, which came into force on the 2nd of April 2008. The ERP defines the issues of the worst forms of child labor, minimum age of employment, the rights of a child, the condition on restriction of employment of children, hours and type of work, that the child can perform if the child is above the age of 15 years, which is the minimum employment age in Fiji. It also sets out the conditions under which a child can be employed, taking into consideration that the employment should never in any way affect the child's educational participation or the child's development. Our government has also ratified the ILO Convention 138 on the minimum age and Convention 182 on the worst forms of child labor, which are both in the ERP, or the Employment Relations Promulgations. On 28 May 2013, whilst I was still the then Minister for Labour, Industrial Relations and Employment, I had gazetted the list of hazardous occupations, the kinds of jobs that children are prohibited from being part of if they are below the age of 18. This legal notice came into effect on the 28th of May 2013. This hazardous list basically defines that there are types of work that children cannot be employed in. This was the first for Fiji, and we are proud of the commitment in ensuring that we work towards the goal of eradicating the problem of child labor and ensuring that we provide the right environment for our children to grow and attain the necessary educational, training and competencies for their future employment and their creativity. The ERP, that legislation, gives the framework by which our labor officers and our labor inspectors, and it also gives them the authority to enforce the minimum age of employment and the other conditions of employment for children who are above 15 years. Those who violate this law, take note of this, I hope the media publishes this bit. Those who violate this law can face a fine ranging from $10,000 for an individual or $50,000 for a corporation. So the message is, don't do it. Don't employ children in these hazardous occupations. To this effect, an employer was convicted in November 2014 by the Employment Relations Tribunal and was fined $8,600 for breaches of the child labor provisions under the Employment Relations Promulgation. We are all working towards ensuring that we achieve our aims of ensuring that we have a child labor-free Fiji, and that we must work towards achieving this goal. It is my hope that we, from whichever walks of life we come from, continue to be vocal advocates for the right of the children to be free from child labor, but not only to be vocal advocates. When you see something happening that is wrong, you must take action. You can't just go and talk about it and complain about this and that if we ourselves don't take action. One of the most famous leaders in the world that we've ever had, a leader who did not have any formal authority, like he was not given a job in his government, not given a job, but he actually took one of the greatest powers in this world to its knees. He was a guy who walked out with no shirt. He walked around with no shirt. He always walked around with this piece of cloth was wrapped around his head and tucked in the back. You know what his name was? Mahatma Gandhi. This is what he had to say. If you want to have a change in the world, what must you do? You yourself must change, and you must be that change. If you don't do that, it's never going to happen. So things like child labor, if all of us as a society, if all of us as a country, if we see it's happening and we don't do anything about it, then you really need to question yourself. Because we always talk about values. What are your values? The values are the thing that is reflected in your behavior. If you think that child labor is important, but then you see an instant of a child working when he's not supposed to be working, that child labor, then eliminating child labor is not your value. Your value is reflected by your behavior. So what I'm encouraging all of us here today, to make this a value for us. Today is World Child Labor Day. All of us should make a commitment that every time that we see it happening, every time we know that something that is happening that is going to prevent the child from leading to their full potential, we as citizens of this country in all walks of life must make sure that we do something about it and not just talk about it or become very good talkers but not doers. The world needs people who do something about it. I am confident that there will be fruitful discussions today and that the awareness of child labor will be raised to another level. Before I open this workshop, I leave with you a quote from the former ILO Director General, Juan Somavia. A very good quote. No to child labor is our stance. It's the stance of the ILO. Yet, even though that is our stance, yet 250 million children 250 billion children are in child labor as a matter of survival. They do that just to survive. A world without child labor is possible with the right priorities and policies. Quality education, which we are trying to deliver. Opportunities for young people. Decent work for parents. A basic social protection for all, driven by conscience. Let's muster the courage and conviction to act in solidarity and ensure every child's right to his or her childhood. It brings reward for all. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, children, members of the media, representatives of our major stakeholders, I now have the pleasure of declaring open the World Day Against Child Labor Program. Thank you, and Dhanyabad.